Welcome to Resourced and Resourceful Leadership, a podcast for people who care about the world and their impact in it. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Pettit. Thank you for listening in today. There were several directions I thought about going for this particular episode, but as I sat down to prepare, I noticed a weariness within me that led me to the topic for today, which is rest. Before I get there, this episode weaves in a few threads from past episodes, including listener feedback. So thank you to those folks who left messages on SpeakPipe or who sent me messages. Another thread that I weave in is from the last episode where I interviewed Dr. Neda Tushnet, and one of the initiatives we mentioned and a very important person behind it who I am remembering this week and often. My own weariness is coming from a few places. I'm a bit tender today after being on the receiving end of coaching that focused on my parenting and ultimately what I experienced as a child that led me to not ask for what I needed or wanted. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. Overall, it was very supportive, but the tenderness is there, and it carried over into some other conversations that are going on in my world about student behavior and the way teachers are showing up at my daughter's school. And yeah, I'm grateful for a dear friend who picked up the phone when I was feeling pretty worked up about it all earlier today. I will say that I am feeling encouraged about the recent elections, but there's like this but there's a lot that's positive, and things that I value were affirmed in the recent elections. I think the but of it is that I'm also feeling a bit wary of the whiplash of politics in the US, wary of the sports-like energy of people lining up behind their quote-unquote team. Beyond team or political party, I'm seeing people, fellow humans, and wanting to forge more connection and to build security, safety nets, well-being, and justice. And I know many of us share those desires, so that is something that I'm holding on to and I'm heartened by during this time. I'm probably also weary because it's daylight savings time week. And even though we gained an hour, which is great, I think I got to clean my car out with that extra hour, I'm feeling tired. It's a different time. It's getting dark earlier. And so as I was preparing for this episode, my office lights were just feeling too bright. And yeah, I also am recording on the night of the full moon. And so I went out and took a look at the full moon, and I'm actually recording with my main lights off and a few candles burning and my door open, so you might hear a little extra background noise. But my office door is open. I thought, I'll just let some of that like full moon energy in, and that kind of nighttime. I'm recording at night. So yeah, I'm sitting here lit by the light of my computer and some candles and just inviting the outside in a little bit, and maybe a little bit of whatever is there. I'm not in my little bubble right now, I guess. So we're going to go to a message from my Aunt Babs, who shared some thoughts with me after the episode where I talk about my mom.
Hello, Christine. Thank you for that lengthy episode. That was the deep dive that I needed to better understand your relationship with Carolyn. I really appreciated um, an extension on what I'd already known about her joy of the oldies and having fun. And it also heartened me to think about the good times that think from the past, particularly thinking of you as a kid being on stage with Chubby Checker. It just, yes, it's the other side from what I could have seen as you were growing up. I love you, and I'm really, really thankful for you. Bye bye.
Of course, it's always good hearing from Babs, and I appreciated the reflection back and the reminder again of those fun memories that I talked about in the podcast, and also reflecting back on that podcast. I felt like there was more to say about the decisions that I made around the care for my mom and how I was engaged with her along the way. And I was remembering some of the steps that I took to care for her and also to care for myself in that process. And overall, I am really proud of that time of my life and how I was able to show up for my mom, but in that, really to show up for myself and what I felt was important for that healing moving forward. I also just today got a message on Instagram from a listener who's also a fellow colleague and podcast host. I didn't ask for her permission to share the whole comment, so I will just say that I appreciated that she also reflected on that episode and said that it was touching, honest, and vulnerable, and she shared ways that she related to it as well. And that meant a lot to me too. So I love just hearing from you, listeners, and I'm appreciating the feedback and also the cheering me on. I'm really feeling that. And so, in that vein, my friend Miles left a message after listening to the most recent interview with Nada. So, I'm going to share that right now.
It's Miles. Just wanted to drop you a note to let you know how much I'm enjoying the podcast. I noticed your episodes tend to come out on Thursdays, which is perfect because I drive to LA. It's the one day of the week that I drive to LA. And so I have something to look forward to every week on Thursdays. Happens to be the same day that Jon Stewart puts out his podcast. So I'm like, oh, good. I get to listen to John and Christine today. So really loving it. Keep it up and look forward to the next one.
I love that, Miles. Thank you. You totally made my day. And yes, my podcast does come out on Thursdays. And this is the 10th week of Thursday podcasts coming out. So I did do a trailer and my dedication episode, and then 10 regular episodes. So I am giving myself a little pat on the back for that because my goal is to release weekly episodes for a year. And I'm 2.5 months in. Pretty cool. I really appreciate you listening in and appreciate being like in community in this way. So, and in conversation in this way. So please be like Babs and Miles. dear listeners, and send me a message, or yeah, whether it's on SpeakPipe or a message like my colleague sent me. I love to hear from you. And it doesn't have to just be like kudos, but it could be like, hey, this made me think about this, or I'd love to have an episode on this, or you should interview so and so. I love that kind of feedback as well. That said, those are some of the threads I wanted to weave in. The other thing that I wanted to share was Nada and I talked about the boards and commissions work in Long Beach, and I wanted to share a remembrance of the person who really established that model, and that's Laurie Jones Neighbors. Laurie, like, what order to share this in? But it's a remembrance because Laurie died 3 years ago. She died unexpectedly after a short illness, and it left a big hole. Her death left a big hole for me. Just, I expected to have more time for our friendship to evolve and for us to be able to support one another and be in community together and work together. But as I was saying, she was the driving force behind boards and commissions work, the model she established when she was working with Urban Habitat in the Bay Area, and then took that model to other places. And in particular, in Long Beach, I worked with her on that. I actually want to share what I wrote shortly after I found out that she died. So this was November 3rd, 2022. She died on November 1st. It's not fair has been the refrain reverberating through my brain and heart for the past 24 hours since learning about the sudden and unexpected death of Laurie Jones Neighbors. Laurie was a colleague turned friend who saw me on a level deeper than makes sense given our initial, primarily work-focused interactions. I met her in 2013 as we endeavored to launch Long Beach's first training for people not typically represented on boards and commissions to serve in those roles. Countless Long Beach commissioners and community members, and many others in many other places, have been impacted by her work and deep belief in democracy and mutual accountability, whether they knew her or not. But Laurie is much more than the empowering work she's created and supported. She was a loving friend, wife, mom, and granny. She was thoughtful, creative, and joyful, even when acknowledging the weight of the world. I feel like I'm losing a friend who championed me in so many ways, in work, as a mother with a mother wound, and as a thinking and feeling human. And I know so many others feel that loss too. Rest in peace and power, dear Laurie. I want to say a little bit about that and about her. So I think, that captures it a lot, but there was just this, like, I remember being on the phone with her. She's the kind of person who would say, like, how are you doing? No, how are you really? And shortly after I gave birth to my daughter, without her knowing a ton about my history or background, I think she just knew, like, becoming a parent is hard. And she probably had some sense of maybe, some of the challenges. I don't know. I tend to be an open person too, so maybe I let on in some way. But she just offered me a lot of compassion as a new mother, and that meant a lot to me. And it was like, just like, I felt like she could really see me. The other thing I wanted to share is I learned a lot about her that carries over into my work as a consultant. When I wrote this, I was not yet full-time in coaching and consulting. And in fact, when I went to her memorial in June of 2023, I think I insulted half of the audience by saying like it was ironic that I was at a consultant's memorial. Not really. I think people understood, but I had a lot of negative encounters with people coming into the community or the organization and working with me or working with people in the movement spaces I was in, and like just not really taking into account the knowledge, the experience, the wisdom that was in the room. And I'm not just talking about from me, but from the broad base of people that we worked with. And I also felt like a lot of times consulting, like, it was kind of like people coming in and doing things, but not necessarily leaving the place like better or more resourced, more resourceful. Anyway, I learned from her and others. I'm not going to say, like, I have a wonderful network of consultant friends, but I had like some really bad experiences that left a bad taste in my mouth. And Laurie really showed me a couple things. One, like how to treat people that she was interacting with, but two, how even she would like push back on the people paying her, because a lot of times in the work I was doing, it was she was paid by a foundation and then we were kind of receiving that training from her. So she, I think, I don't know if she called herself this or we got the sense, but she was like a philanthropy dominatrix. And sometimes philanthropy needs someone to tell him what's up. So I really appreciated that about her. I appreciated just her realness. She's also from Texas. And I felt like she could just talk to anybody. And yeah, she just had a lot of care for people. She's easygoing and fun. And I know like that's a smidge of her. Nobody is all those things all the time. And I know she was discerning and selective in terms of who she was friends with or who she extended that care for. But I saw a lot of openness in her that I really appreciated. And I feel like there's more that I wanted to say there, but it just felt like our friendship barely scratched the surface. And yet, look at how much I was impacted by her being in my life. And so when I wrote that, I was having that thought of it's not fair. It's not fair. That sentiment, of course, it was for her. It was for her partner, her husband, Gordon. It was for all the people who cared about her and loved her and who she loved. And it was for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I really wanted to be like a friend and a colleague for many years with her. So I wanted to share that remembrance of her. And I think I'll probably talk more about her with one of my upcoming interviewees. I'm excited. I have some great people lined up for interviews soon. But I wanted to just share, like, in this season, this Dia de los Muertos, All Saints, this remembering period that I'm really remembering Laurie right now. And that something I'm proud of is that she talked about the work we did in Long Beach as really like a model for what she had in mind when she created the boards and commissions work. So I love that because I look up to her. And she's someone we talked about initially, like we talked about doing some projects together. She wrote me into a proposal that ultimately didn't land. But yeah, like there was just this possibility there. And now I am connected working with the firm that she created, Cities and People, and connected to many dear ones who worked with her, who knew her, who were inspired by her, are inspired by her, and who miss her. So it just felt important for me to acknowledge her right now during this time. So yeah, just holding a lot right now. And I'm also letting go of what I'm holding by allowing myself to talk about rest and by allowing myself to record in a more peaceful environment. And I'm not sleeping. I am creating right now, and it is at 10:35 p.m. and I want to release this by midnight, so I'll be getting that up soon. But before I do that, uh, this workshop that I did in 2024, January of 2024, on rest came to mind as I was journaling and preparing for this episode. So I wanted to share a little bit. I'm going to share a little bit about that with you. And also in early 2024, I did talk or a workshop called Rest and Play for public health professionals. That was during Public Health Week for the city of Long Beach. It's a national public health week, but I did it for the city of Long Beach in particular. It was a fun workshop. I got to do it twice that day, and probably like 130 people or so, maybe more, participated throughout the day. So that was really cool. A lot of how I think about rest these days comes from the NAP ministry, or Tricia Hersey. And yeah, she uses the NAP ministry as kind of her organizational name, but as an author and person, her name is Tricia Hersey. And she wrote Rest is Resistance. She wrote another book recently. I want to say it's called We Will Rest, but I might be wrong. So I encourage you to look it up. I'll also put them in the show notes. And then I have this rest deck, which is cards that have a saying on them and a little bit more on the back about that saying related to rest. So the rest deck, it's the NAP Ministries Rest Deck, 50 Practices to Resist Grind Culture by Tricia Hersey. And when I did the January workshop, I pulled 3 cards and let me see if I can find them. Oh, yes. So the 3 cards that I pulled, the kind of affirmations were: let rest be a delicious possibility. Rest is a lifelong practice, and I am enough now. And so I pulled 3 more cards for today's podcast, and one of them was the same: I am enough now. The other one that is just really resonating right now is: rest is not a privilege. Rest is a human right. I don't have to earn rest. And the third one says, I am expansive. I will rest. So I'm just looking at them right now, and I think I will read one of them. I'm liking that I am expansive. I will rest. Repeat this to yourself quietly. I refuse to let the systems have me, trick me, use me, or steal my rest. No human or system can tell me my own liberation is not possible. I don't belong to grind culture. I will rest. Speak these words whenever you feel grind culture robbing you of your energy and time. I'm also loving the one on the back of I am enough now. The deprogramming from the brainwashing of grind culture begins in the quiet and powerful truth of your inherent self-worth. You are enough now. Can you slowly begin to believe this in the deepest parts of your heart and mind? Speak these words aloud over and over again. I am enough now. I can rest now. You are enough now, and you can rest now. And I'm just feeling like so much more energized than I was when I was reflecting on this episode and preparing for it today. Since then, I sorted through the rest deck and pulled a few cards. I helped my daughter with her homework and going through the bedtime routine, and even fell asleep putting her to bed. But I had set my alarm for 9:30 so I would get up and record this podcast. So I'm feeling more energized and excited to talk to you about rest. When I did the how to actually rest workshop, I shared Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith's, or maybe it's Sandra Dalton Smith. She has a TED Talk, and she talks about how sleep and rest are not the same thing. And she also names the 7 types of rest, there could be more, but she names 7 types of rest: physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, sensory rest, creative rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. So, physical rest, of course, is what we think about when we think about sleeping, resting the body. This can also include naps, breathing, yoga, stretching, meditation, or stillness. So, as I talk about these 7 types of rest, I encourage you to think about which area of rest you currently feel best about, or like, oh, I'm getting that type of rest, if any. And then also, I encourage you to think about which area of rest would you like to explore getting more of. So I just shared about physical rest. Then there's mental rest. Resting the mind, taking regular brain breaks during your workday. Music, silence, journaling. Emotional rest, expressing emotions, sharing or being witnessed. Therapy or coaching, journaling, self-care. I love in this description they just throw in stopping people pleasing. Yes, that's definitely a practice. So yes, different emotional rest that you might get. Sensory, resting the senses, lying down or napping with an eye mask and earplugs, silence, turning off devices, turning down lights. Spiritual rest, doing things that provide meaning, could be meditation, spiritual practice, community. Social rest, spending time with supportive people, filling your own battery, nurturing important relationships. And creative rest, making creative spaces, putting beauty around you, being in nature, resting the brain, being childlike, playing. So those are the 7 types of rest and some examples. Again, I encourage you to think about, where are you getting rest right now? As I was reading the description for sensory rest, I was just thinking about how I turned off the lights and lit some candles here, and I'm just creating a space that feels more peaceful for me. And this podcast for me is creative rest too. It's honing my voice and creating. Earlier today, I had some emotional rest. I think like the parent coaching that I received was not restful, but it was important. But then when I was struggling with the conversation around my daughter's school and classroom stuff that was happening on our WhatsApp chat, I found myself getting upset, and I called a friend in the class, and she let me express how I was feeling and was supportive, and that was so helpful. So I'm just noticing as I'm talking through this with you, the different types of rest that I'm just practicing right now. So I encourage you to reflect on where you're getting rest and where you'd like to get more of. And, it can be tiny things too that are supportive of you. Another resource that I used in my workshop was a podcast episode, How to Really Rest. I would link it, but it's by Simone Soul, and I love her podcast. But she got rid of one incarnation of her podcast that had that as the episode, and it was one of the last episodes there. So you can't listen to it, but a lot of it is inspired by her reading Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. Tricia Hersey and the Nap Ministry is a great resource for you. And I will share a little bit about what I got from that podcast episode. So Simone talked about different types of rest, or some ways to rest that were inspired by the book Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hersey. So slowing down time, practicing doing things in a more slow or deliberate manner. So the question that I put there is, what are things that you do or would like to do that slow down time? It could be, something that's coming to mind for me is when I really bring my attention to what I'm doing and do it mindfully. I mentioned cleaning out the car the other day, and because of my practice around mindfulness and the tradition of Zen Buddhism that I've had the opportunity to practice, everything can be meditation. Washing the dishes can be meditation. In this case, I intentionally made my cleaning out the car time more meditative and just paid attention to what I was doing and moved slowly. So that's one way you could experiment with slowing down time. But I'm curious what comes to mind for you. Playmaking. What can you play make that would feel light, fun, and interesting? She talks about that's that kind of creative rest too, but without the expectation of perfection. So maybe it's making something with your hands, or drawing, or playing, like strumming an instrument or whatever, but like doing it where it's not about the actual product, but more about the process. Or how can you just bring some play into your life? Connective time, connecting with others, connecting with yourself. What would feel connective in a nourishing way for you? Spiritual time. What does connecting to spirit look like for you? She talks about animal body time. The funny thing for me about not having listened to this episode for a while is like, what did she actually say about this? But it was like things that like remind you that you're like a human in a body, and like connect you back to your body and your humanness. So what connects you to your animal body? You can interpret that how you would like. Protected time. protecting time for yourself and things that are important to you? Are there any boundaries that would be helpful for you to set around your time? She talks about dopamine free time. And that's like that sensory rest too. What can help your brain rest free from stimulation? So I have some questions for you to reflect on. You can, just either listen and take them in now, especially if you're driving. You can pause them. You can pause and come back to this and maybe journal with them. But just a few questions for you to think about. What is your current relationship to rest? What are some areas that you'd like to strengthen? And what is one commitment that you are willing to make to bring more rest into your life? And when I talk about commitment, I encourage you to think of it as a light thing, like something that you could practice, something that you could play with, something that doesn't take a ton of time or energy. Though maybe you do want to set a specific goal that is more weighty, that's okay too. But I just want to encourage you to recognize it's kind of like the small things that can add up, and a frame of mind of remembering and reminding yourself that you're enough and that you are worthy of rest. And rest can look like many different things. So it's really for you to say what is important to you right now when it comes to rest. I think this is a good place to stop today. I think I am ready to go get some physical rest and sleep soon. But I hope that there's something there for you in this to think about in terms of your rest and your enoughness. And thank you, as always, for listening. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to hear more of the Resourced and Resourceful Leadership podcast, please follow or subscribe to the show wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. To support the show, please leave a 5-star review and share the show with a few people who you think would appreciate it. And I will put the link to SpeakPipe in the show notes, as well as some of the references that we talked about here. Of course, I'd love it if you left me a message about what stood out to you from this show or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Thanks again, and take good care.